Hello and welcome to the debate. I'm Kaveh Taghvai. The Saudi kingdom may be reeling in a power struggle. The potential future heirs to the regime there are disgruntled against the young prince MBS and his actions, like the assassination of journalist Khashoggi. In this edition of the debate, we will look at how real the replacement of MBS is, who may be the potential replacement, and whether any of this will lead to instability in the kingdom.
As global pressure is increasing on Riyadh over the assassination of dissident journalist Jamal Khasshogi, sources close to the Saudi royal court say dozens of princes want to see a change in the line of succession. Sources say princes are discussing the possibility with other family members that after the king's death, the 76-year-old Prince Ahmed bin Abdul Aziz, a younger full brother of King Salman, could take the throne. Prince Ahmed has reportedly gained the support of some Western powers as well. Bin Salman's role in the murder of journalist Jamal Khasshogi is the main reason for the widening gap among members of Saudi royal family over the choice of the next king. Saudi Arabia's public prosecutor has said that the crown prince knew nothing of the killing, but the CIA has concluded that Mohammed bin Salman, also known as MBS, has ordered Khashoggi's killing. In reaction to the CIA report, U.S. President Donald Trump says the assessment is premature but possible.
They haven't assessed anything yet. It's too early. That was a very premature report, but that's possible. We're going to see, but we're going to have a report on Tuesday, and it'll be very complete.
While Trump has failed to take a solid stance against the Saudi crown prince, some U.S. politicians, including Republican Senator Lindsey Graham, have slammed bin Salman's role. Graham called Salman toxic that can never be a world leader. The publication of the CIA report and other evidence about bin Salman's role in the murder is increasing pressure on the Saudi crown prince. Will this pressure, as well as various condemnations from around the globe, affect the appointment of the next Saudi king?
Our guest joining us in this edition of the debate, we have Professor at George Washington University, Nabil Mikhail, who joins us from Washington, D.C. Also joining us is journalist and political commentator Syed Moshin Abbas, who joins us from London. Well, I'd like to welcome you both, and let me first start with you, Nabil Mikhail. Saudi Arabia's royal family members, according to reports, want to prevent the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman from becoming the king. Of course, that's in the wake of the revelations about bin Salman to have actually ordered the assassination of Jamal Khasshogi. What reasons are there for them to want this young prince to be pushed aside?
First of all, greeting to you, to your guest, and to the audience. This is an important topic and a good question, and there is a great deal of speculation about it. Is there some drive to change the line of succession in Saudi Arabia at the highest circles? This is possible, but let me just be pointedly to the main argument of such a difficult topic and state my position clearly, and I will be happy to defend it. Only who will decide the succession in Saudi Arabia are two people, and only two people: King Salman bin Abdul Aziz himself and President Donald Trump. No action will be taken from whatever echelon of power in Saudi Arabia about the crown prince status, except with the consent of Washington. And I have lived in Washington for a long time, and I know the depths, the contours of Saudi-American relations. So if, as you stated in your question, there are some talks at the highest level of government, Saudi Arabia, inside the dynasty, the royal family itself, about changing the line of succession, I'm quite sure that Washington is fully cognizant of it, and it will have a say in what will happen soon or later.
Well, let's talk about what Washington has said just in the past hour, Syed Moshin Abbas. And I'm going to ask you to be patient while I read this quote that came from Donald Trump, who said, in any case, our relationship is with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. They have been a great ally in a very important fight against Iran. The U.S. intends to remain a steadfast partner of Saudi Arabia to ensure the interests of our country, namely the U.S., Israel, and all other partners in the region. It is our paramount goal to fully eliminate the threat of terrorism throughout the world. What is your reaction to Trump's statement there, Syed Moshin Abbas?
Well, it's consistent with what the US has always held to be true of its relationship with Saudi Arabia, that basically their economics trumps their, if you like, ethics when it comes to their negotiations or deals or partnership with Saudi Arabia in the region. There are three main reasons for this. One is oil and the dollar's connection to the oil. The other one is, of course, US bases and the access to a military, if you like, position within Arabia, which they desperately need to keep the oil flowing out. And of course, they've also got their enmity with Iran, for which Saudi Arabia is clearly being used as a major bulwark against. These are the three sort of defining areas. But let me just expand a little. The oil relationship with Saudi Arabia is really interesting, because you've got around about September this year, you've had a situation where the Saudis have begun to release more, they've begun to release less oil onto the market. And actually, this is quite a defining point, which hasn't been clarified in many instances. The bottom line is that by reducing the oil output, what they're actually doing is effectively causing prices to rise in America. Donald Trump doesn't want that. MBS is likely to be supportive, given his current situation. It's an interesting, if you like, battering ram that Trump could use on MBS to persuade him to release the situation on oil in a way which is beneficial for the Americans. So this is an area I'd like to sort of highlight, given that actually the Khashoggi case hasn't really impacted the oil scenario around the world so far, but there's a sign that given 2 weeks from now that OPEC will be meeting, that this situation could change. The Saudis, if they do carry on reducing their oil output, it will impact US oil prices. It's just another factor, but this is what fundamentally dictates the Trump-Saudi relationship. It's about economics, not ethics.
Well, we will expand on that a little bit more, but Nabil Mikhail, I'm sure you heard what the U.S. president has said, and what is very interesting about this is the way that this posturing by the U.S. is going to affect the way that the U.S. is going to be viewed. When Donald Trump says it is our paramount goal to fully eliminate the threat of terrorism throughout the world with Saudi Arabia, knowing that there are either the orders came from the Saudi Crown Prince or from the higher levels, the CIA to have said that it was the Saudi Prince to have done this, which meant dismembering a body of a person to put into bags, yet they think that Saudi Arabia is the one to fight terrorism and it's Iran that is the enemy. Iran who's been fighting terrorism. You see, from the outside looking in, all of this may sound like gibberish to some.
Okay, it's actually a two-level process. And this what Donald Trump supports. He thinks that Iraq, Yemen, Lebanon, Hamas are more important strategic files than the deaths of a Saudi journalist in Turkey. So yes, he is not happy with what happened in the case of Jamal Khasshogi, but he still hates Iran. He's still focusing on the Islamic Republic of Iran. There is a bad feud between him and the government of Iran because he thinks it has challenged America in many strategic confrontations in different countries. The other thing is that he wants Saudi Arabia to maintain the momentum of that was initiated by Mohammed bin Salman, especially the rights of women to drive cars, to go out publicly with no... so he wants no one to impede these steps. This is why he will keep supporting the Saudis, and also he will watch carefully if there is a talk, and a serious talk, about changing the line of succession. And America is studying what happened when Mohammed Salman himself came to power. He, first of all, Mukrin, the son of King Abdulaziz, Prince Mukrin, cordially agreed with his half-brother King Salman to leave office, not to be the crown prince. Then there were two people, including Mohammed bin Salman himself, Mohammed bin Naif, and then Mohammed Naif exited. So America is studying this scenario. Could this happen again? Possible. Everything is possible. But America wants to see any new appointee, if this happens in real, supportive of its anti-Iran policies and someone who endorses the trend to reform the domestic situation in Saudi Arabia. This is, in a nutshell, what the Trump administration believes and what does the President of the United States subscribe to regarding his country's relationship with Saudi Arabia.
Syed Moshin Abbas, our guest there, says what the U.S. wants, what Donald Trump wants, but within the kingdom, Syed Moshin Abbas, there's unease. I mean, you have dozens of princes who want to see a change in the line of succession. And at the same time, we know that the MBS himself, he's not exactly that popular when it comes to the princes, because we know that just recently, of course, I'm sure you know, that he milked these business elites and businessmen. He took them to the Ritz-Carlton, jailed some of them, still in jail, I believe, and milked them for about $100 billion. So there's this huge uneasiness that's going on right now. Do you think that the young prince is going to be able to surmount that?
Well, it is. It's debatable. The backdrop to this is, of course, the security services and all the other levers of power which bin Salman is in charge of effectively in Saudi Arabia. And which way would they swing? Would their allegiance remain with the 34-member allegiance, if you like, the traditional body that's, if you like, on the surface selected who the king will be? It's not guaranteed that Mohammed bin Salman, as crown prince, even though he's been accepted by this 34-member collegiate, that it's not guaranteed that he will be appointed as king if King Salman dies. Now, the fact of the matter is he is not liked. Mohammed bin Nayef, Mitheb bin Abdullah, 30 other princes were humiliated and stripped of wealth. 500 billion, I think it was $500 million on a new yacht he was spending, whilst at the same time he had a situation where he was putting these princes under lock and key, and he didn't release them until they paid up and until he stripped them of many of their powers. So of course he's not liked. The reality is that he has been profligate. At the same time, he was also in the art market, Western art market, buying Da Vinci's artwork. So clearly, whilst he was doing all this and clamping down on the Saudi princes, it hasn't gone down well, and there is mistrust. There is an inclination that Prince Ahmed bin Abdulaziz, his uncle of 76 years age, will be the one who may stand up as an alternative. He was one of 3 people during the Allegiance Council who opposed MBS from becoming crown prince as well. Let's not forget that. So yes, there's much disquiet.
Well, maybe, Nabil Mikhail, you can tell us whether MBS is going to need to go through some kind of process. Tell us the role that the Shura Council actually plays in this, or is he promised and guaranteed the seat once King Salman is relieved from his power? I mean, does the immediate conclusion from that be that he's going to gain that power, the MBS, or does the Shura Council actually play a part in that?
This is a very important question, and honestly, I confess my lack of knowledge about how the Shura Council works in Saudi Arabia, but I studied politics, so I know about the working of political institutions and how they articulate their demands through certain channels. To be concise, I believe that any policy regarding designating a successor to King Salman will come from King Salman himself. So even if the Shura Council plays a role, it will be an initiative submitted by King Salman to the council, to the Shura Council, to debate and deliberate. And it will be a consensus decision, more or less. Yes, there could be yes and no's, which is typical of any political decision subject to voting, but it will be portrayed as a consensus decision. And I am not going to go too far and talk about other names. I will perhaps think that King Salman will, if Mohammed bin Salman is removed, he will appoint one of his sons, either Khalid, who is the ambassador here in DC, in Washington, or perhaps his older son Faisal. So it will be within the house of Salman. I'm not going to speculate about any other names. And in this way, the king will be still in command, and he would ensure a transition smooth enough not to let any other side worry, especially the United States.
Okay. Well, Syed Moshin Abbas, let me ask you, when we talk about the Mohammed bin Salman, you know, he came on the scene with lots of wind behind, and aspirations, I should say, behind his plans. But many of his plans, whether it's the economic plans that he has with mega projects, to the Aramco sale, which at this point is defunct of it going through, they've all fallen short. At this point, probably one of the biggest debacles or failures would be also the war in Yemen, which is pretty much, he's come out empty-handed on that. There's not much to bank on when it comes to Washington, except for maybe the fierce rhetoric he has against Iran. Don't you think that Washington may be thinking of an alternative, other than perhaps Trump making a decision, other Congress members perhaps contemplating another replacement?
Well, I think that it's a miscalculation on the part of the United States to trust MBS to deliver on anything. As you rightly pointed out, he's failed on every count so far. He's apart from the fact that he's giving them $110 billion worth of arms deal, and he is trying to, if you like, basically take on the resistance to imperialism in the Middle East on their behalf, and he's operating on behalf of Israel as well, whilst doing so. Apart from that financial deal, they haven't really benefited from him directly. The Yemen war is an embarrassment to the Americans. Now, globally, people are beginning to recognize that the US is completely out of control, especially under Donald Trump's hands, and we're fast moving to an era of pseudo-fascists who are actually running pseudo-democracies, especially in the US. So actually, I think he's a huge liability, and it's going to be released. This recording of the Khashoggi murder is going to run, because after the farcical, if you like, inquiry that was conducted by the Saudis themselves, which was laughable in itself, what you're finding is that Erdogan and the Turks are actually releasing information slowly and steadily. Only today they're supposed to release an audio recording, which Turkish newspapers are saying actually implicates the Crown Prince even further. And it's the CIA itself has also virtually put a stamp of confirmation that actually the Khashoggi murder goes right to Salman himself. So internationally, there's absolutely no credibility left for this individual, and that credibility rubs off on the US, if it had any already with Donald Trump the way he is. It's actually creating a situation where the likes of Israel, the likes of Saudi Arabia and the US are becoming increasingly isolated from the rest of the world, not only because of their own partnership with each other and their obvious injustice, but also because they seem to be unreliable, they seem to be inconsistent with their international agreements, including the JCPOA with Iran. And actually, there's no sense of any kind of decorum or the old school way of doing things, which at least kept the world at some sort of level of, if you like, sensibility. We're entering an age, I think, now where, you know, these things there's nothing guaranteed, and Donald Trump and MBS represent that insecurity that the world is facing now.
When we started out the program, Nabil Mikhail, you said that there are two basically decision makers in this whole thing. It's either going to be the US president or it's going to be King Salman. King Salman obviously has stood behind his son. He did so just a couple days back when he addressed the Shura Council. Now, the US president didn't exactly say that he is going to keep the prince. When you take a close look at his statements, he has said that Saudi Arabia, they're our great ally, fight against terrorism, bulwark against Iran. So he's the one that's in a catch-22 right now, in a sense, because if he goes with that CIA intelligence report and with what Congress wants to do, that means privately that he's going to have to say that the U.S. will no longer work with the MBS, or he can go against all of that and keep his relationship with the prince. Do you think that he's going to keep that relationship, or do you think they're working for a replacement?
Difficult question and important question. I think Trump is talking to King Salman himself and is trying to figure out what Saudi Arabia and America can do together to ease this tension and ensure that the transition in post-Salman era will be smooth and also legitimate. So I think we do not know what transpires inside their private conversations. But even if there is an official denial of it by a White House spokesman or spokeswoman, I'm positive that King Salman and Donald Trump are talking all the time about it. So it will never be a surprise to the Americans, although the official statement will be America was surprised. No, that's not true. So something is going on. I do not have a crystal ball to forecast anything, but I think there will be an agreement between Riyadh and Washington over what the next phase in Saudi rule will be, and it will be a consensus decision by the two sides.
30 seconds to you, Syed Moshin Abbas. You have these princes. They don't want Mohammed bin Salman. If there's not an agreement for MBS to be pushed aside, there's one theory that somewhat has been discussed, and that is the notion of perhaps a soft coup to take place. Do you think that that is a possibility? 30 seconds.
There is always a possibility there. You see the security services and the other operations, for instance, have a loyalty to the Saudi family as a whole. Prince Ahmed bin Abdulaziz, who's 76-year-old, the brother of King Salman, was the former Deputy Interior Minister for 40 years. One can only conclude that he has a link and a strong link within the Saudi internal apparatus. But if the United States and the American security services, which are clearly watching the Saudi security services and actually probably very likely operate most of their functions, if they're scrutinizing them, the fear within the Saudi, if you like, levers of power will be there, that they will all get bumped off as well, because he has been very ruthless. In short, I think it's highly unlikely that there'll be a soft coup. I think ultimately the Americans at the moment under Trump want Mohammed bin Salman to come forward, and they will do everything they can, I think, to make that happen.
Thank you. We're going to have to end it there. Professor at George Washington University, Nabil Mikhail, thank you for your statements, and journalist and political commentator Syed Moshin Abbas, thank you for your statements from London. And that is for this edition of The Debate. Any questions or comments, newsroom@presstv.ir is our email address. When we Kaveh Taghvai and the entire team at the Capital Tehran is goodbye.